Hello and welcome back to Film Pro Productivity and Success, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creative people, all creative people really, to live a more focused, effective and hopefully a happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 91, Revisiting the 12-Week Year. To become fit requires discomfort. To earn a significant income requires discomfort. To become great at anything requires you to pay the price. To become great, you must choose to allocate your time to your greatest opportunities. You will have to choose to spend time on the difficult things that create the biggest payoffs. To be great, you will need to live with intention. That will require you to be clear on what matters most, and then to have the courage to say no to things that distract you. Brian P Moran, unquote. So, welcome back. I am here at last. It's been a bit of time. It's been a crazy year, 2021. And I can't see it's been a great year for me business-wise, although I had a lot of good gigs on a lot of high-end productions here in Scotland. I didn't get that many days on them though. When I say a lot of them, I did a lot of productions. I did a lot of high-end productions, but I only got maybe 2 to 6 days on most of them, except for maybe 2 jobs. I think I did 8 days on one on Sky, and I did 10 days on a great one called The Control Room, which is going to be out this year. Anyway, that's an aside. Those of you that follow me on social media, though, will know that this episode very nearly didn't happen because I've just heard that the next 2 projects in which I was going to be working have been killed due to the latest restrictions placed on us by the British, or in my case, specifically the Scottish government here, the COVID restrictions. I work as a fight coordinator in UK film, theatre and television, and the trouble is that the COVID restrictions have limited hand-to-hand combat in most of the productions, and at this time only about 25% of my previous work remains. My main employer, BBC Studios, has actually written all fights out of their scripts since March of 2020, and with the remaining work barely covering the bills, I need to make some major changes in my life and my work in order to keep a roof over my head, basically. I'd planned 2 new seasons of this show, though, this year, to run right through the year, one every 2 weeks. But with the loss of this income that's just happened here that I expected from these next 2 projects, as I say, I'm going to have to shelve those plans. But I still care about you guys, and as I was working up a new 12-week year strategy for myself anyway, I felt it was really worth the extra effort to make a new year special just for you on that topic. And I've tackled this topic before, of course. Well, of course, I'm saying, of course, it was in season 1, and I have re-listened to it recently, and, I think I could do better. Season 1, it's like anything. It's actually one of the things to do with the 12-week year. You're never going to be great at something when you start. You need to put the hours in, and I think I used the quote later on. I heard Brian P Moran, one of the writers for the book, say this. He said, confidence comes from competence. And, here I am on episode 91. I think actually I've recorded some like 96, but some of them are like little side episodes that I don't count as episodes. But I'm more confident, certainly, and I'm definitely more competent. It probably took me 5 minutes to set up to record today, whereas originally it certainly took me like 2 days to set up. So just that constant working on something and you're going to get better. And that's one of the reasons I want to revisit it, because really I didn't do it justice. But also it is an incredibly powerful system, and I think it's apt that this new year I tackle it for you, because if you can go into the new year with this strategy in place, you're going to get a lot more out of the year ahead. So this is the New Year special. It's going to launch on the 2nd of January in the hope that those of you that are still struggling to get stuff done can basically use it to get more out of that year ahead. I've completed several 12-week years myself, and the results really have been quite incredible. 2021 was not only marred for me by, there not being that much fight work, but also by an eye infection that I got. You don't want to hear this. I had something going on with my eyes. I don't know if it was an infection or what, but I actually found it difficult to look at screens for about 3 months. And because, again, of the COVID situation, I couldn't actually get seen by a doctor for that whole time, and eventually it went away. But I think at the end of it, it's probably affected my vision. This is a very negative start to something, but I want to mention it there. It really marred the first 6 months, or the first probably 4 months of the year, that thing. But the biggest thing that happened, and I've mentioned it before, is that I got myself into a tricky situation with a car purchase that I got from a dodgy car sales company in Bathgate near Edinburgh. My productivity in the first part of this year, in fact, I'm recording it on New Year's Eve, incidentally, so this is still 2021 when I'm recording it, but my productivity for the first part of this year was almost a write-off due to the stress and worry that this caused me, this car situation, because in effect there wasn't much money coming in. I had invested in a new car so that I could reliably get to work. And then this turned into a nightmare. The guy would basically, I got scammed by this company. I now know that the guy is a sociopath. I didn't know that at the time. It took me, I think it was until July or August to get him into court, because the court system does not go quickly in this country. And then the judge booted his arse up and down the online courtroom for about an hour, and I came out of it with my money back and a little bit of damages and things like that as well. And he got a right good boot in the you know what's. I'll still try and keep it family friendly here. But anyway, that knocked out the largest part of the year for me. I really couldn't get much done. My productivity was knackered. So I turned to the only thing that I thought would give me traction again, and that was the 12-week year system. And I used it to achieve a first draft of a feature film that I've been planning for a very long time. I've actually been working on it for 5 years and developing it for 5 years, but I'd never actually written the first draft. I'd always found reasons not to do it, or I'd always been distracted by work or whatever not to do it. I also wrote a short film, which isn't the longest short film in the world, but it's actually pretty good. It's 4 pages long, in fact. 4 pages, yeah. It doesn't sound like I've put much effort into that one. But, you know, I had to get my headspace together and get into a place where I was actually finding something that I thought was worth shooting and it was set relatively fresh, etc. And I achieved that as well. And I also lost 1.5 stone. I'd been aiming at 2 stone, but I only got 1.5, which I still count as a win. So that's all fine. And that was because I focused my time, my energies and efforts onto those 3 things over 12 weeks. And this episode today is a bit of a deep dive into the system set out in the book, The 12-Week Year. It's a system that works. It really genuinely works. And it's one I want you to seriously consider undertaking yourself once, twice, 3 times, possibly even 4 times in the year ahead. If we did the things we're capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. Thomas Edison, unquote. In our personal and professional lives, we tend to set out goals based on an annual plan of attack. New Year's resolutions set in January aim to create the desired change by the end of the year, and organisations set productive goals annually and do annual reviews of their progress. But this kind of annualised thinking is what Brian Moran and Michael Lennington's book, The 12-Week Year, Get More Done in 12 Weeks Than Others Do in 12 Months, sets out to challenge. And by the way, most of the quotes that I give today will be attributed to Brian P Moran rather than to both authors. I think I could be wrong that this is because they both created the system, but Brian actually wrote the book. That's what I'm kind of gathering from the way the book is written, the way it's worded, and from quotes I've seen elsewhere. The book has 2,906 5-star reviews on Amazon, and it is a New York Times bestseller, so it's no lightweight. You should really be aware of that. Now, the 12-week year asks readers to consider redefining what constitutes a year. Instead of the 12-month time frame, they propose that we begin viewing years as a 12-week sprint because people's focus, motivation, and energy levels fluctuate throughout a standard year. And I should mention too that the authors found that people are much more motivated and driven to accomplish their goals during the first quarter of the year, and then it quickly tails off. This motivation quickly sags, as I say, during the second and third quarters, and really doesn't pick up again until the final few months. The way I often describe this to people is in terms of the New Year's resolution. In the first 6 weeks of the year, we have a drive which quickly fades away, leaving 85% of New Year's resolutions to fail, well before the 6-week mark even arrives, in fact. And others may let the resolution go early on and only start to focus on it again in the latter 6 weeks of the year. So the 12-week year takes this energy from the front and back end of the year and focuses it down into a single period, effectively missing out the 9 months in the middle. And working in this way means that you can focus your time and energy to achieve significantly more in 4 12-week blocks than you ever would in one 12-month one. Brian Moran and Michael Lennington point out a big hazard with what they call annualized thinking, that it creates a perspective on your workflow that there is all the time in the world to meet your year-end goals. This hazard, this problem, is backed up by statistics as well, which show that most organizations achieve 40% of their productivity only in the last 60 days of the year because of a forced end-of-year push. And at that point, company employees suddenly become focused on only those tasks that lead to the intended results, and a new sense of urgency motivates their productive input. Annualized thinking tricks us into believing that it's no big deal if we fall behind early in the year, as we come to believe that there will always be time to catch up. It's like cramming for an end-of-year exam, for example. So rather than pushing our workflow and capacity at the end of the year, we're encouraged to redefine this timeline to 12-week periods in order to encourage high productivity during every day of the year. They point out as well that when you focus for 12 weeks on any aspect of an annualized plan, your deadline is always in sight. This focus helps you to push past your productive limits and motivates you to achieve more immediate results. We mistakenly believe that there is a lot of time left in the year and we act accordingly. We lack a sense of urgency, not realizing that every week is important, every day is important, every moment is important. Ultimately, effective execution happens daily and weekly. Brian P Moran, unquote. So the 12-week year, in short, is an execution system. It's all about taking your ideas and turning them into reality. 90% of the time, plans fail due to poor implementation, so setting out the plan is only part of the system. And I've talked about plans and strategies many times in the show, including on the last 2 New Year specials, as I said, these Jenny Ditzler's Best Year Yet episodes. And I strongly urge you, by the way, if you like what you're hearing here, to go back and have a listen to last year's special specifically. It's a little bit more polished than the one before, as the act of defining guidelines for yourself, strategies, a new empowering paradigm to replace an old failing one, a major focus for the year ahead for you, and up to 10 long-term goals is a worthwhile one. And also, and it's mentioned in the 12-week year as well, just looking back and reviewing what your wins and successes have been over the past year is definitely worth doing as well. But anyway, have a look back and listen to that one, because that system can work in tandem with this one. If you take it and split those goals that you set out for a year and split them over several 12-week years. If you have 10 big pillar goals over a year, though, I'd not recommend that you tackle all of them at the one time. I'd say tackle no more than 3 of them in any 12-week period if you really want to succeed. The chances of you completing them will be greatly increased that way. So I'll just flag at this point, this isn't going to be a short episode, by the way. It's quite involved. I've put an awful lot of effort into it, possibly too much effort. But I want to just explain that setting out a 12-week year, it's not just, you don't just think about it and do it. It's not that easy. It's not like flipping a switch. There has to be a significant mindset shift, and some 12-week years you're going to do will do better than others. The 12-week year, though, is an implementation system, and when you cease to implement, when you cease to take action towards your goals in a considered way, you will stumble. Brian Moran says that execution is the single greatest market differentiator. Great companies and successful individuals execute better than their competition. The barrier standing between you and the life you are capable of living is a lack of consistent execution. Effective execution will set you free. It is the path to accomplish the things you desire. And to reach your goals, you have to be able to execute the plans that you set out. So it's not enough to know what it is you want. It's never going to be enough. If you're overweight and unfit, you already know, for example, that eating better and doing some exercise will be a good couple of steps to take. But how often do people actually take those steps? No, knowing what to do, setting out a plan is pointless if you can't execute that plan. And the emphasis of the 12-week year is on implementation. It's built on 5 disciplines that will help you to create and reach your goals, and 3 principles that will help you to maintain the right mindset as you move through the process. And I'll cover the 3 principles first. They are accountability, commitment, and greatness in the moment. And accountability is ultimately ownership. It's a character trait, it's a life sentence, a willingness to own actions and results regardless of your circumstances. The very nature of accountability rests on the understanding that each and every one of us has a freedom of choice. And it's this freedom of choice that is the foundation of accountability. The ultimate aim of accountability is to continually ask oneself, what more can I do to get the result? Got it? The second principle is commitment. It's a personal promise that you make to yourself. Keeping promises to others builds strong relationships, and keeping promises to yourself builds character, esteem, and it's in the title of the show, success. Commitment and accountability go hand in hand. And in a sense, commitment is accountability projected into the future. It's ownership of a future action or result. Building your commitment capacity has a dramatic effect on your personal and business results. The 12-week year helps you to build the capacity to follow through on critical commitments and achieve breakthrough results in all areas. And I'm just turning away from the mic for a second. I wrote this in the board as I was thinking about it when I was driving in. Commitment will always be at odds with your feelings. You know, your commitment to doing exercise every day when you're sitting on the couch with a cup of tea and thinking, oh, I'll just watch another episode of whatever you've got in front of you. That's going to be a battle. Your commitment's got to trump that every time. The commitment, that promise to yourself, has got to be kept. So it is a cornerstone of the 12-week year here. It's a cornerstone of execution, of getting stuff done. And if you don't work daily, which I'm going to probably get on to in a minute, day in and day out towards your goals and stick to that commitment, that future goal you're going for, that future result will never be reached. And the final principle is greatness in the moment. This is not achieved when a great result is reached, but long before that, when an individual makes the choice to do what is necessary to become great. The results are not the attainment of greatness, but simply confirmation of it, if you get what I'm saying. You become great long before the results start to show it by that commitment and that accountability I was talking about a minute ago. The greatness happens in an instant. The moment you choose to do the things you need to do to be great, and each moment that you continue to choose to do those things. These 3 principles, accountability, commitment, and greatness in the moment, form the foundation of personal and professional success. And don't worry, folks, I'm going to recap on these at the end. For now, though, let's look in detail at the 5 disciplines of execution that will help you to achieve your 12-week year. And the authors found that top performers, whether athletes or business professionals, are great not because their ideas are better, but because their execution disciplines are better. Without proper execution, all of your finely crafted plans and strategies will collapse. The secret to living your life to its potential is to value the important stuff above your own comfort. Therefore, the critical first step to executing well is creating and maintaining a compelling vision of the future that you want, even more than you desire your own short-term comfort, and then aligning your shorter-term goals and plans with that long-term vision. I don't know if you got the full meaning from that one. There's a lot to unpack there. I'll just say it one more time. The secret to living your life to its potential is to value the important stuff above your own comfort. Therefore, the critical first step to executing well is creating and maintaining a compelling vision of the future that you want, even more than you desire your own short-term comfort, and then aligning your shorter-term goals and plans with that long-term vision. Brian P Moran, unquote. Discipline 1 is create a compelling or an aspirational vision. This is one that's all too easy to skip, especially if you don't understand what your vision is, but you have to get your head around it. A compelling vision is your idea of your best life. And whatever you Envision for your future, whether it's a bigger status in business, a higher income, a specific place in the creative world, or more satisfaction just in life generally. Your vision should be significantly greater than your current life. When you imagine a world where you have everything you want, no matter how outlandish, you're even more emotionally invested in making that future come true. And that emotional investment is needed to help push you through the struggles you're going to encounter on your journey. An emotional connection with your long-term goal encourages you to do what is necessary to achieve it. You also activate the part of your brain responsible for cognitive reasoning, and that will begin forming new pathways based on your vision. Your heightened thoughts begin the process of strengthening your beliefs, which helps quiet the part of your brain that triggers fear of change and failure. What was the quote I heard recently about fear of change? Feel the fear and do it anyway. That was a good one. Can't remember where I heard it, but I liked it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. But back to the discipline. Your vision must be big enough to activate both parts of your brain, because without the fear, you won't be pushed to achieve your greatest potential. The book explains that a compelling vision will evolve through 4 stages of belief. Impossible, your vision won't seem reachable when you first dream it because you won't know how to make it happen, but you don't need to know how yet. The question to ask first is, what if everything I wanted came true? This question starts your neurons firing and forming pathways of possibility. So what if everything you wanted came true? What if? The next stage is possible. The more you continue to imagine all the benefits of your new life, the stronger your neural pathways regarding that life become. As those pathways strengthen, your belief in your dream strengthens until you feel like you could actually attain it. And when you reach that point, you reach the third part of what they're talking about, which is probable. Things become probable. After you move into believing that a future is probable, you start to focus on how you can achieve it. The steps you begin to develop to achieve your vision become your plan of attack. And with a good plan, you start to truly believe your dreams will come true. And the 4th stage of this is the given. You now see exactly what to do to shape your life into what you want it to be. And you believe your dream is inevitable because you can see exactly how to get there. Dream big about the life you want to truly trigger your brain to react. Use that vision to fuel your endeavours as time progresses. And as I said before, do not skip this element. It's really, really important. And in fact, if you're having trouble with it, I'm going to try something this year. I'm researching images to represent my vision, and I'm going to pin them up to remind me why I'm doing what I do. And with services like free print out there, I don't know if you know what that is, there's basically companies out there that will do your photograph printing up to a certain number for free if you just pay the postage. It's an easy shortcut. So if you're willing to put a little time into that, I think that would be a good idea, and it would really help you in creating and maintaining a vision for the future. A vision without a plan is a pipe dream. Brian P Moran, unquote. Discipline 2. Create a granular, tactical, time-bound plan. To start making progress towards your 12-week goals, you're going to need an actionable series of steps that will help you to get to the finish line. Assign realistic due dates to each task that you set yourself, and consider the potential roadblocks ahead of time so that you can anticipate them and proactively plan for them as well. An effective plan clarifies and focuses on the top priority initiatives and actions needed to achieve your vision. And remember that a good plan is constructed in a manner that facilitates effective implementation, and I'd recommend that you use the SMART system of goal setting that I've outlined before. I think it was in the last season, in fact. And that acronym states that all plans should be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. And if you can't recall what all of that actually means, and you can't be bothered looking back to see what it means in the episode itself, specific would be I want to lose 2 stone. Measurable, it's a measurable thing. It's quite measurable. You know, if you're going down week by week, that you're losing weight. You know, if you're going up, that you need to change something. It's not quite working, whatever you're doing. actionable. You need to change the way you're eating. You need to do some exercise and plan how that's going to happen and actually implement it. That's actionable. Realistic. You're not going to try and lose, too much weight over a short time. You're going to go for something which is achievable. And finally, time bound, which is kind of built into the system anyway, which is 12 weeks. You want to lose the 2 stone by the end of 12 weeks. That's what the SMART system is. And you should also state that your plans in a positive way if you truly want them to succeed. And again, last year's New Year special will give you a terrific system of strategic planning if you want to tackle it with your best year yet system. It's called Your Best Year Yet. So go back and have a listen to that one. But your plan, it's got to align with your long-term vision. You must adapt it as you go along if necessary as well. And you have to stay focused on it. Keep it simple, or as simple as you can, moment by moment, by breaking it down into edible parts and keeping it meaningful. I did an episode called How Do You Eat an Elephant? And effectively that comes down to one part at a time. So if you've got a very complicated thing, don't try and do it all at once. Break it down into simple, actionable parts, and you'll be able to achieve it on the long term, But again, it has to be meaningful. You don't build your plans around someone else's dreams and visions. It's got to mean something to you. If you don't keep it meaningful to you, you're going to find it very hard to execute. Discipline 3 is process control. And this consists of tools and scheduled events that align your daily actions with the critical actions of your plan. These tools and events ensure that more of your time is spent on the correct activities. Mike Tyson famously said, "Everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth." Process control will help you to work to your plan, even when you, figuratively speaking, get hit in the mouth. It's not enough to have a vision and a plan. If your goals and plan are designed to help you achieve a higher level of performance, then you most likely have specific tactics that are new actions for you. New actions are almost always uncomfortable. Without structural and environmental support, follow-through becomes a constant exercise of willpower. Brian P Moran, unquote. Process control uses tools and events to create support structures that can augment and in some cases take the place of willpower. And an example of a process that could benefit you would be a weekly plan. A weekly plan, it's just a tool that translates the 12-week plan into daily and weekly action. And the weekly plan is an instrument that organizes and focuses your week. It becomes your game plan for each week. The weekly plan, it's not a glorified to-do list. It reflects the critical strategic activity instead that needs to take place that week in order to achieve your goals. This doesn't have to be made on day one, by the way. Actually, if you do, it will likely fail, but should be tweaked and set out week by week. And I do use to-do lists within it, but I use the to-do lists day by day. And what I tend to do is set my weekly plan on a Sunday. And I would work at the Sunday's not a day off instantly. If I can get a 1 hour's work done towards my goal on the Sunday, even though I'm spending time with family, etc., then that is moving me towards my goal. So I might spend an hour perhaps writing something, but I would also spend 20 minutes setting out what I was going to do in the week ahead. Then when you've got a plan for the week ahead, day by day you can work off to-do lists, and by the end of that you can achieve a little bit more. And the second element of process control is peer support. And this is never actually something that I've been able to use successfully. I have tried to do it with other people, but they've always fallen away while I continued on to the 12 weeks, which is interesting. But I can totally see why it's important, and I'd really love it if I could find the right people to join me. I'm constantly on the lookout. I'm communicating sometimes with people I think would be a good match for me and who I think this would work for. But I'm much more cautious these days about who I effectively get into bed with on projects, and to some extent this would feel like a project. So I'm very, very cautious with this. But then I've burned my fingers a lot with collaboration, as my episode Collaborators will tell you, which is one of the more popular episodes I've ever done. So it must be a common event. But putting that aside, I can totally see why having peer support would make the 12-week year stronger. An example of an event with peer support that would assist, in fact, would be a weekly accountability meeting, or a WAM, they call it in the business world. The WAM is a short meeting that is typically held in businesses on Monday morning after everyone has had a chance to plan their week, and it lasts approximately 15 to 30 minutes. And this isn't a punitive session where they try and hold others accountable and dole out negative consequences or tongue lashings for those that are faltering. The WAM is, in fact, used to confront breakdowns, recognize progress, create focus, and encourage new action. And most WAMs loosely follow a standard agenda, which goes as follows. 1, an individual report. Each member states how they are tracking against their own goals and how well they have executed them. Number 2 would be successful techniques. As a group, they discuss what's been working well and how to incorporate these techniques into one another's plan. And number 3, encouragement. The format there is obviously pretty straightforward. This is very similar if you've ever been to a weight loss thing, which I have to admit I am at a weight loss thing at the moment. I'm not that heavy, by the way. I'm not where I'd like to be, but that's the format you would get at Weight Watchers or one of these places like that. And that's how a WAM, a weekly accountability meeting, might run. And you could do that over Zoom or over WeTransfer. No, that's not it. Was it WhatsApp? That's the word I was looking for. You could do it over something like that. Often people assume that because they know what they need to do, they won't benefit from a weekly plan. Based on numerous studies and our experience with thousands of clients, that is just not the case. A plan between your ears is not nearly as effective as a plan on paper. In our experience, you are 60 to 80% more likely to execute a written plan than a plan that is in your head. Brian P Moran, unquote. And I also do DDP yoga with Diamond Dallas Page, and he says something similar. He says, don't just think it, ink it, which is nice. So nice. Don't just think it, ink it. A common pitfall with this discipline as well is that people fail to plan each week as they come because they get distracted, they get stressed out or whatever, or because they don't have time for it. Or I should say, think they don't have time for it. Or perhaps they think they don't need to do it at all. Worse still would be because you feel that you're above it, or because you think you already know it all. Another highlighted pitfall is that you assume that all weeks are the same and you kind of become disconnected from your plan. So try and stay focused on the plan that you've set out and on the schedule that you've set. Keep revisiting it and assessing it to keep it fresh. Measurement drives the execution process. It's your touchstone with reality. Truly effective measurement combines both lead and lag indicators to provide the comprehensive feedback needed for informed decision making. It's the feedback loop that lets you know if your actions are effective. Brian P Moran, unquote. Discipline 4, keeping score. I've had an epiphany on keeping score in recent years. I write my to-do lists on whiteboards. And what I used to do is when I completed something is I would wipe it off. So at the end of the day, I had a blank board and there was some satisfaction in that. However, I changed what I was doing. Instead of wiping something off that I'd completed, I crossed it out. And that meant that I could see what I'd completed. I could assess my successes and I could recognize them. And that's part of something I batter on about quite a lot called the productivity cycle. By missing out this congratulatory part of the cycle, the recognition of what you've achieved, not recognizing your achievements fully, you will probably short-circuit your productivity. In order to keep drive going, this is about drive, keeping score on what you're doing will help you to maintain that. It'll help you to maintain your drive. So keeping score is important. In the best measurement systems, there are lead indicators and lag indicators. The lag indicators are the end results, and your 12-week goals are the ultimate lagging indicators. If you're tracking progress towards your goals, then you're tracking lag indicators. This was actually being discussed on Twitter a couple of days ago as I used this quote from Brian Moran, the thinking that says, I will start building my ideal future tomorrow or next week or next month is fatally flawed. The future you are going to live is the one you are creating right now at this very moment. Kind of harks back to one of the principles, greatness in the moment. But the past is in the past, and the future hasn't come around yet. So don't measure your success or progress necessarily just by the goals that you must reach, those end goals. Measure it also by the daily actions that you take. Doing that will move you incrementally towards those goals, and you should know that. Then the goals, to some extent, will take care of themselves. And with the 12-week year, you would also be well served to try and identify a set of lead indicators that you can track monthly, weekly, or daily, so that if you're getting ahead of your plan and gaining ground, there'll be a good indicator of your progress. You'll know if you're falling behind, for example, or you'll know if you're just hitting your targets and you're keeping on track. And the most effective lead indicator that you can have, as I spoke about a minute ago, is a measure of your weekly execution. So it's critical that you measure it. It's that thing I was saying about, crossing off the stuff that you've done. Don't obliterate them. Tick them off. Have them there so you can see your progress. The authors found that if you execute a minimum of 85% of the actions due in your weekly plan each week, you are very likely to hit your goals at the end of 12 weeks. So you don't have to aim for perfection in this. You just have to do the best you can. When I did my last 12-week year there during the summer, during the autumn, I should say, I used a very clear lead indicator when I was writing the feature script. I did a 30-day challenge. It was a screenwriting challenge to write a feature within 30 days. And if I wrote just 3 pages a day, every day, I realised I would have a 90-page script by the end of it. And by day 29, I was on 94 pages. And I used day 30, in fact, to go back and fix a few things. And I was able to easily keep going over that time as I knew that I was on schedule to complete. And I did actually have a wee nosy about there. I started, in fact, I didn't start with nothing. I actually started with 18 pages of breakdown that I had. But like as that goes on, it was 18 pages that I was going back and reworking. That jumps up by day 3 to 24 pages. By day, where are we on? Day 10, I was at 38 pages. Day 17, I was on 57 pages. Let's just go here. Day 23, 76. And finally, the last few days, day 26 was 84, day 27 was 88, day 28 was 91, day 29 was 94. And I actually haven't written down what the last day was, but I was able to completely track my progress over that period. So lead indicators really work, and they're really, really great for giving you momentum. So apply keeping a score as a system, and you're going to find that it will be self-correcting, and you'll always know if your actions are moving the needle. Pitfalls for this one include thinking that keeping score is unimportant or too complicated, abandoning the system when you don't score well, or not scheduling a block of time each week to assess your progress. If you start doing these things, you're less likely to succeed. But if you take the time to review your progress each week, perhaps as a group with others, if you've got a peer group doing it, everybody doesn't have to be doing the same thing. They don't even have to be in the same industry. Everyone's 12-week year goals should, in fact, be different. But if you're working with a group, you could assess with others. If you commit and recommit to make progress each week and each day, and if you remember that scores of less than 85% each week aren't necessarily bad, then you're going to do fine with this. One of the barriers that our clients often cite when explaining what keeps them from achieving more of what they're capable of is a lack of time. The lack of time reason is so common that it seems very real. Yet more often than not, it's a smokescreen that covers over a real barrier. In fact, what most often keeps you from being exceptional is not a lack of time, but the way you allocate the time that you have. I know that sounds like semantics, but it's an important distinction. Brian P Moran, unquote. And so the final discipline I want to talk about is discipline 5, time use. And I honestly feel like I could do an entire episode just on this one topic. If you are endlessly watching TV or YouTube, that's my addiction, or you're forever faffing about on social media, if you're clicking links to the next TikTok or the next video of a boxer dog doing some awesome thing, what am I talking about? I would never do that. Or if you are gaming into the wee small hours every single night, let's face it, folks, reality check, you're never going to reach those bigger goals that you keep talking about. And you know this. I don't need to say it. And everyone needs to relax and chill out and have downtime. I'm not saying you don't, but how much of that leisure time that you're taking is just laziness? Seriously now, come on, how much? In 2011, the average American spent 2.8 hours a day watching TV. That's 12% of our lives, and I dread to think how much time social media accounts for at this point, by the way. To become fit requires discomfort. To earn a significant income requires discomfort. To become great at anything requires you to pay the price. To accomplish what you desire will take sacrifice. The number one thing that you will have to sacrifice to be great, listen up folks, to achieve what you're capable of and to execute your plans is your comfort. Brian P Moran, unquote. Effective time use can be the difference between mediocre and great performance. The problem is that the world is rife with potential distractions and interruptions that arise non-stop throughout the day. A 2005 time use study published by Basics, a business research firm, concluded that 28% of the average professional's time in a day was spent on interruptions and associated recovery time. That's about 11 distracted hours in a 40-hour week. Spending leisure time and doing comfortable tasks is undoubtedly healthy in moderation, but when we consistently choose comfortable activity, we are dooming ourselves to lives lived far short of our capabilities. Brian P Moran, unquote. To be your best, you must intentionally align your time and activities with your strengths and your unique capabilities. When you do that, you will also experience a new and ever-increasing level of performance and satisfaction. To achieve this level of performance will require that you carve out time for the strategic, those actions that are important but not necessarily urgent. Strategic activities don't typically have an immediate payback, but they create a substantial return in the future. To stay focused on your strengths, you will need to manage your interruptions and keep the low payoff activities to a minimum. Just while I'm on that topic, actually, I've been shutting down my social media accounts more and more recently these days. In fact, in 2021, I was only actually online for 7 months of the year. 5 months of the year I took as social media breaks. And you do get a hell of a lot more done when you're not on social media. It's not a great benefit unless you're promoting something. I mean, I like interacting with the people there. There's always someone. Matt's always giving us a retweet. Hi, Matt. How Petra? You're always out there giving us a retweet as well. That's appreciated. But although I like that element of it, and there's loads of people on there that interact on this show, and love you all. That's why I'm here. It's a hell of a distraction, isn't it? You've got to admit it. So in the next block that I'm doing, I'm going to try and stay off social media for 12 weeks. I doubt I'll do it because I doubt I'll be off the whole time, because part of my 12-week year is I'm going to be creating some video work. That's one of my goals. So I'll probably come on to say, look, here's a video I made. I don't know if it'll interest you or whatever. I'm just doing some simple stuff in order to facilitate some learning, but I'll fire the stuff out there. But yeah, not being distracted by social media is going to be something I'm going to try and embrace for potentially up to 3 months off. Certainly it'll be greatly reduced during that time. But anyway, back to the show. The reality is that if you are not purposeful about how you spend your time, then you're leaving your results to chance. While it's true that we control our actions and not our outcomes, our results are created by our actions. So it stands to reason that actions that we choose to take throughout the day are ultimately going to determine our destiny. And harking back to something which I think was in the quote right at the top of this episode, and it's the second episode of this show, I cover it in great detail. You need to be intentional about what you say yes and no to. The power of no is what episode 2 is called. If you're saying yes to everything that comes along because you're trying to be nice, then you're not going to be focusing on your own stuff. You're going to be dragged this way and that way. Only say yes to things that further your own dreams and goals, unless one of your dreams and goals is, of course, to help other people. And I've done a lot of helping of other people over the years, but in the last 10 years, I realised that none of the films that I've made, in fact, even longer than that, I have any ownership of. My feature film, Fast Romance, I don't have a single penny of ownership of that. I don't have any control of it. I'll never make money from it because I've given every percentage of it that I owned away in order to keep it going. And for those of you that want an update on that film, it does appear that the second chap that owned it, who was the partner of the person who passed away, it sounds like he's passed away as well. So that film is unfortunately in limbo land, and I have no control over it. Unfortunately, I'm forever tied to it because I directed it and put the whole thing together, but I have no control over it. I don't get any money from it. It's just one of those things. But every single other film I've signed off to other people in the past 10 years. So my focus at this point is really on my own stuff. That's an aside though. I keep getting distracted. Let's power on to the end. Be intentional about what you say yes and no to. Be intentional about carving out time to do the things that matter most, knowing probably that you won't get it all done. Then let the rest of your day fill around that. Effective time use is the final one of the 5 disciplines of the 12-week year. In combination with the other 4, with vision, planning, process control, and scorekeeping, it is an essential part of the proven 12-week year system. And by the way, on the back of that last one, I've referred to the Eisenhower matrix before. That's a simple box split into 4, which I'll upload an image of it onto the main website, onto filmproproductivity.com if you want to have a look at it, or just Google it. The Eisenhower matrix, or the Eisenhower box, it's sometimes called. It splits your tasks into urgent, non-urgent, important, and unimportant. That important, non-urgent stuff, it was mentioned before there. Where's my notes on that? These are the strategic activities that don't typically have immediate payback, yet they create substantial returns in the future. They're the important ones. The important, non-urgent stuff is the most valuable time you have. That's the time you should spend on your own projects and on your own goals that are going to come to fruition in the future. And with that in mind, you must learn to run your day and not let it run you. What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Dwight Eisenhower, 34th President of the United States, unquote. I'm going to end today by talking again about accountability and also about the victim mindset. I did a whole episode on victim mentality last season. It was called The Other Pandemic Victim Mentality. And I do think we've got a big problem with it right now. But here is what Brian Moran has to say about it. And I actually had forgotten he talked about it when I did that episode, or I probably would have dipped into this. But it's definitely going to keep you back. It's a huge issue. Anyway, here's what he has to say about it. We've all heard stories of people who refuse to take responsibility for their actions and blame others for their failures. It's their parents' fault, their boss's fault, the fault of the Conservatives or the Liberals or the Democrats or the Republicans. The system is out to get them. Someone or something else is always the cause of their failure. Our culture supports this victim mentality more and more. In fact, our legal system even promotes it. We now reward people for not taking responsibility for their choices and finding someone or something other than themselves to blame. In spite of the perceived benefits, however, people with a victim mindset pay a terrific price. A victim allows his success to be limited by external circumstances, people, or events. As long as we continue to be victims of our circumstances, we will experience life as a struggle and others as a threat. Accountability, on the other hand, allows you to gain control of your life, shape your destiny, and fulfill your potential. In its purest form, accountability is simply taking ownership of one's actions and results. The fact of the matter is that successful people are accountable. Accountability is not blaming yourself or punishing others. It's simply a stance in life in which people acknowledge their role in outcomes. Accountability is not concerned with fault, but rather what it takes to create better results. He also warns that accountability is a massive thinking shift. Our society views accountability as consequences, but accountability is not consequences, it's ownership. It's the realization that even though you don't control the circumstances, you do control how you respond. It's the understanding that the quality of your choices determines the quality of your life. It's the recognition that in any situation, you always, always, always have choice. The choices you have in a given situation may not be very attractive, and we won't all have equal choices, but you still have them. And that is an important and empowering distinction. So, let me recap on where we are with all of this. The 12-week year is a guide to shortening your execution cycle down from 1 year to 12 weeks. It changes annualized thinking on your goals into periodic thinking. Shortening the cycle brings the goals closer and helps create a sense of urgency, which can be activated again and again, meaning that you consistently get more done. And I use that word deliberately. Consistency is the key to making this system work. And if you do the math, by the way, you can fit 4 12-week years into a standard year with enough room to make every 13th week one you can use for assessment. You can look at what has come before and see how well you've done, and you can use the second half of that week to prep for the next 12-week you're about to begin. And all these 12-week years don't have to have business goals set out either. You can have fitness goals and weight loss goals. You can have family goals, time spent with children, etc. Your goals are your goals, so don't set goals that are set out for other people unless, of course, it's part of a business strategy and you're being paid for it. The 3 principles of the 12-week year are accountability, commitment, and greatness in the moment. The 5 disciplines, and these are sometimes worded in different ways. The 5 disciplines are: 1, create a compelling or an aspirational vision for yourself. 2, create a granular, tactical, time-bound plan. 3, process control. 4, keeping score. And 5, time use. This is the first and best book that I would recommend right now to anyone who actually wants to achieve their goals quickly or even greater things in the longer term. The execution of this system doesn't have to be perfect either. It just has to be, as I said a minute ago, consistent. If you're learning something new and can give up the notion of perfectionism and recognize that you need to work towards being good at something incrementally, moment by moment, your confidence will build from the competence that you gain. I mentioned this again, as 12-week years are particularly good for skill building goals. Stay on target with this system and try not to bail out. If you start to struggle or stumble, then go back, pick just one of your goals and focus down on 3 daily actions that will help you to achieve it until you finally get back on top. Remember too that sometimes you will just have some bad weeks. So think about that. Consider it. Sometimes you get a bad week. Don't bail out. Keep on going to the next one. Also, find yourself some accountability partners if you can and take on a 12-week year with them. And let me again clarify that your partner's 12-week years should not be bound in any way to your own unless you're working in the same organization, of course, something like that. You've got to maintain control of your own goals and let those people keep control of theirs. Your own goals must be meaningful to you. Don't do them in service of someone else, or you will just fail in them and they're not going to move your dreams and aspirations any further. Remember that they don't need to be similar goals that these other people are doing, and they can in fact be entirely diverse, but you can still keep each other accountable when it comes down to it. Your call to action is to start planning your own 12-week year. I'm launching one myself with at least one other peer on the second week of the new year. And I'll use the first week to plan it out, although I'm pretty sure I know where I'm going with it. If this is something that interests you, then I urge you to grab yourself a copy. It's available on Amazon right now, and you can find out more by going to 12weekyear, that's 12weekyear.com. If the whole thing floats your boat, there's lots of resources there. This has been an extra long episode as it goes, but it's just a drop in the ocean to what the book offers in detail. I hope you found it interesting and that you get something out of it. At the moment of recording, I'm 100% not sure when the next show is going to be. If I can get it to get together to record some short ones, I'll put some content out every 2 weeks. That was my plan. But to be honest, that could very well be a big distraction to my 12-week year, and I'm trying to cut back on them, so I'm not making any promises. Hopefully there's interest in what I'm doing here. Hopefully you're enjoying the show. If people keep interest in it, I'll keep on going. If not, I'll probably start wrapping it up around about episode 100. Just so you know, that's on my mind. I'm taking this next 12-week year myself to build skills in new areas, as I need to wrestle control of my finances away from this industry that's hobbled by protocols, COVID protocols that are strangling it. And I'm going to be hopefully coming up with some new income streams allowing me to take back control. And once I get control of that again, I can more specifically detail when I'm going to be releasing episodes. At the moment, it's just more important for me to earn money than to produce shows that don't bring in any cash. I've never monetized the show. I do it to give back. I do it to help people out, but it is massively time consuming. I mean, here we are at around about 1 hour of this episode, and you know, I took a good couple of days preparing it. It's going to take a full day to get this together and get all the stuff out. I just can't commit 3 days of no income to producing this stuff. It's not a sensible thing to do. And as I'm a productivity guy, I need to bear that in mind. But as part of that 12-week year, I'm leaving social media in order to reduce the distractions I have in my life. But I appeal to you now to please go and leave some reviews and share recommendations of the show to other people. In fact, I've just had one pop through there. Someone on Instagram has shared the show on there and urged people to go and listen to it, and they love it. I've not got it at hand, but whoever you are, thank you very much for doing that. I'm saying whoever you are. Hold on, let me just pause this recording and I'll come up with it. Hold on a second. Right, I've paused it and looked at it. It's Keith Hammond. Thank you very much, Keith, for doing that. That makes all the difference. If there's nobody listening to this, I'm just not going to be producing it anymore. That's what it comes down to. And this sort of thing that Keith's done, and loads of other people have done it for me as well, but I need it to keep happening in order to make it worth my while to keep doing the show. But please leave reviews and share recommendations of the show with other people. If I can focus your efforts specifically onto the Facebook page, I think that would be a terrific thing. It's never something I've actually focused on before. But if you want to look at the show up on Facebook, it's at Film Pro Productivity, and it's got something like 719 likes at the moment, but there's only 3 reviews. A few reviews on there. A lot of reviews on there would be great. A few reviews would be fine as well. Anything you can do to promote the show, honestly, is greatly appreciated. Also, can I just add, can you check your subscriptions? As I am now reasonably certain that I lost a good few hundred subscribers when I changed media hosts. It shouldn't have happened. Apparently, it doesn't happen. I'm pretty certain, looking at the figures, looking at how things went, when I moved media hosts, which was at the start of 2021, I think there was a change with the RSS feed, something like that, and I lost a couple of hundred people. So please double check if you're listening to it now that you are subscribed. If you're subscribed, that just means that it's more likely you're going to find whenever the next one comes out. But that'll do for now. Have a fantastic year ahead, and may the 12-week year serve you very well. I think it's best to let Brian P Moran's words mark the end of this episode, and he says that greatness is not achieved when the result is reached, but rather long before that, when an individual chooses to do the things they know they need to do. Now take control of your own destiny. Keep on shooting, my friends. Have a fantastic 2022, and join me next time, whenever that may be, for Film Pro Productivity and Success. The music that you can hear right now is Adventures by Ehimitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website, only on the official website, filmproproductivity.com. And you can follow my personal accounts on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or follow the show itself on Twitter at filmproprodpod, or on Facebook at filmproproductivity. Please, folks, have a great year ahead. Keep supporting the show by subscribing and spreading the word, and I'll catch you soon. I've always got a bit spare. How did that happen? See you later.